2000s gave us motorcycles that still make modern bikes look weak. This was the decade when manufacturers went wild, building machines that were lighter, faster, and often more reliable than the over-engineered rides we see today. Riders who were there know exactly what I mean. These bikes didn't just win races, they built legends. Some of them are so good that even 20 years later, they still destroy today's motorcycles. Get ready because we're counting down 15 machines from the 2000s that prove new isn't always better. Starting at number 15, KTM 990 Superduke. Back in 2005, KTM unleashed a monster that would redefine what a naked bike could be. The KTM 990 Superduke was raw, it was aggressive, and it was unlike anything riders had ever thrown a leg over. Beneath you sat a liquid-cooled 75-degree V-twin, pumping out around 118 horsepower and nearly 75 pound-feet of torque. That might not sound insane today, but back then, this bike was a street fighter rocket. It weighed just over 400 pounds dry, which meant it felt like a supermoto on steroids. Twist the throttle and the Superduke wanted to lift the front wheel in every gear. No electronic babysitters, no traction control, no ABS in its earliest versions, just you, the throttle, and your courage. And that's what made it legendary. It was intimidating, but also free. Today, you can still find clean examples of the first-gen Superduke for around $5,000 to $7,000 used. Compare that to modern naked bikes loaded with rider aids, and you'll realize why riders still chase this beast. It was the original Super Naked, and it still destroys most of today's refined machines in raw emotion. And if you thought KTM was wild in the 2000s, wait until you see what Suzuki was cooking up with a certain twin that became a cult legend. Claiming the 14th spot, Suzuki SV 650. The Suzuki SV 650 didn't scream with horsepower or intimidate with price tags. What it did instead was prove that simple can be sensational. First released at the turn of the millennium, the SV packed a torquey 650cc V-twin engine that made around 70 horsepower and just over 40 pound-feet of torque. On paper, modest. On the street, fun. The secret was balance. At roughly 400 pounds, the SV 650 was light, flickable, and comfortable. It was as happy carving through canyon roads as it was commuting downtown. For beginners, it was approachable. For veterans, it was a blank canvas for upgrades, track builds, or even stunts. No wonder it became a cult classic that still holds a devoted following today. Best part? The SV 650 was affordable then, and it's affordable now. You can grab a solid used one for as little as $3,000, with mint condition examples creeping up toward $5,000. That's a bargain for a bike that will probably outlive most of the high-tech plastic rockets being sold today. The SV's combination of reliability, low cost, and endless smiles is why people say it beats many modern bikes that try too hard. And the truth is, the 2000s didn't just stop with this twin. They had another two icon that took motorcycle engineering to a whole new level. Rolling into number 13, Honda VFR 800 Interceptor. When you talk about a bike that perfectly blends sport and touring, you cannot skip the Honda VFR 800 Interceptor. This was Honda at its very best in the 2000s. A machine with a V4 engine that didn't just ride, it sang. That engine made about 105 horsepower, enough to push it past 150 miles per hour, but it wasn't about top speed. It was about effortless power delivery that let you carve up a canyon one day and cross state lines the next without breaking a sweat. The Interceptor also had Honda's legendary build quality. Owners talk about hitting over 100,000 miles with nothing more than routine maintenance. The ergonomics were a masterclass. Sporty enough to lean, yet comfortable enough for all-day rides. Seat height around 31 inches made it accessible to most riders. Weight was about 540 pounds, perfectly balanced, so it never felt intimidating. Prices today are shockingly affordable. A clean used VFR 800 can be found for $4,000 to $6,000. That's a fraction of what you'd spend on a modern sport tour. The truth? Modern bikes rarely balance sport and touring this gracefully. The VFR still makes riders smile in ways tech-heavy machines cannot. But while Honda nailed the formula, Another company was busy inventing a whole new category altogether. Landing at number 12, BMW R1200 GS. If the 2000s had a bike that defined adventure riding, it was the BMW R1200 GS. Introduced in 2004, this wasn't just a motorcycle, it was a revolution. With its massive boxer twin engine producing just over 100 horsepower and a torque curve as flat as a table, the GS could do everything, from city streets to remote gravel trails to crossing continents. The GS wasn't just a bike, it was an icon. Movies like Long Way Round with Ewan McGregor turned it into a legend. Suddenly, every rider wanted to throw panniers on and chase the horizon. And it wasn't hype. The GS proved itself year after year as the most reliable adventure bike money could buy. Today, used R1200 GS models can be found between $5,000 and $7,000. Compare that to new ADV bikes pushing 20 grand, and you see why the original still destroys them in value, simplicity, and raw character. If you're enjoying this video, kindly like and subscribe to our channel. You'll never regret it. Number 11, Triumph Daytona 675. When Triumph rolled out the Daytona 675 in 2006, the sport bike world didn't just take notice, it shook. This wasn't a copy of the Japanese four-cylinder recipe. Instead, Triumph went their own way with a high-revving, liquid-cooled, inline triple. The result was a bike with character and a soundtrack that would make any inline four feel lifeless. The engine pumped out about 123 horsepower, but the way it delivered power was magical. Mid-range grunt like a V-twin, top-end scream like a 4, and a curve of torque that just kept pulling. Riders suddenly had a machine that could destroy the Honda CBR 600RR and even humiliate Yamaha's R6 in real-world riding. Back in 2006, you could get one for under $9,000. Today, clean used examples hover between $4,000 and $7,000, making it one of the best value performance machines on the market. The Triumph Daytona didn't just stand with the Japanese, it beat them at their own game. And if you think this triple was a shock, wait until we jump into a Kawasaki that redefined naked aggression. Coming strong at number 10, Kawasaki Z1000. This motorcycle wasn't just a naked bike. In 2003, it was a statement. Strip the plastics, unleash the torque, and let riders feel the engine. This four-cylinder beast churned out around 123 horsepower and over 70 pounds of torque. On paper, that didn't look earth-shattering, but in practice, it was brutal. Brand new, the Z1000 came in around $9,000. Today, you can snag a clean used model between $3,000 and $5,000, which is insane considering how much muscle it still packs compared to modern naked bikes that are heavier, softer, and bloated with electronics. This Kawasaki proved that rawness could be refined and aggression could be comfortable. But if you think this is wild, wait until you hear about the adventure bike from the same era that practically rewrote the definition of world domination. Cruising in at number 9, Aprilia RSV Mille. In the early 2000s, when superbikes were ruled by Japanese fours, Aprilia crashed the party with the RSV Mille. This wasn't just a motorcycle, it was a statement. A V-twin powerhouse designed to go toe-to-toe with Ducati, but at a price that undercut the Italians by thousands. With its 1,000cc Rotax, V-twin pumping out over 130 horsepower, the Mille was all about brutal, low-end torque and racetrack precision. Back in the day, the Mille carried a sticker price of around $13,000. Today, you can scoop one up for under $5,000 if you're lucky, which is insane value considering the performance you get. While modern superbikes are bloated with electronics, touchscreens, and rider modes you don't need, the RSV Mille gives you something pure, raw V-twin fury with nothing in the way. Seniors who still crave that racetrack DNA will love how the Mille balances power with real road comfort. Aprilia's build quality from this era was shockingly strong, meaning these bikes age well if maintained. Many modern riders don't even know this beast exists, which makes it a true hidden gem. Blazing ahead at number 8, Yamaha FZ1. When Yamaha dropped the first generation FZ1 in 2001, it rewrote the street standard rulebook. Imagine taking an R1 superbike engine, detuning it slightly for mid-range torque, and then slapping it into a chassis with upright ergonomics and real-world comfort. That's what the FZ1 was, a wolf in casual clothing. With a 1000cc inline-4, pushing around 150 horsepower, this wasn't just a commuter, it was a street destroyer hiding in plain sight. New, the FZ1 cost about $8,000. Today, clean examples can be found for $4,000 to $5,000, and they're still destroying modern middleweight nakeds that cost double. The FZ1 was lighter than you'd expect for its size, handled like a sport bike when pushed, and had enough comfort to tour hundreds of miles without breaking your back. And for riders who love bikes that last, the early FZ1 is legendary for reliability. Many owners push past 100,000 miles with minimal issues. But the real fun begins when you realize Yamaha wasn't the only brand blending superbike DNA with road comfort. Securing the spot at number 7, Honda RC51/SP2. The Honda RC51. SP2 is the kind of motorcycle that doesn't just show up, it arrives. Born in the era when superbikes were still pure and raw, this machine was Honda's answer to the twin-cylinder dominance of Ducati on the racetrack. And boy, did it deliver. The SP2 took everything that made the original RC51 great and then turned the volume up even louder. At its heart is a 1000cc V-twin engine pushing out just under 140 horsepower. Now, in today's world of electronics, traction control, and lap timers that think for you, that number might not sound massive. On the road, the RC51 SP2 feels like a caged beast. It's not interested in commuting. It's not interested in being nice. It's interested in leaning hard into corners and making your adrenaline spike with every twist of the throttle. Back in 2002, it was sold for around $11,000 brand new. Today, clean examples of the SP2 are climbing in value fast, often reaching $15,000 to $20,000 depending on condition. But if the RC51 SP2 was a razor-sharp race weapon, what about the ultimate speed demon of the 2000s? The one bike that redefined the meaning of fast. Roaring into number 6, Suzuki Hayabusa GSX-R1000. Say the word Hayabusa in any motorcycle crowd, and you'll instantly see heads turn. The Suzuki GSX-R1000. Hayabusa isn't just a motorcycle, it's a legend. When it first hit the streets in 2000, it did something no other production motorcycle had ever dared to do. It absolutely obliterated the top speed records. We're talking about a 1,300cc inline-4 engine pushing out around 175 horsepower and capable of hitting an almost unthinkable 190 miles per hour. The Hayabusa wasn't just fast, it was a missile with handlebars. It was the bike that forced manufacturers to sign a gentleman's agreement to electronically limit speeds, because this thing had crossed into uncharted territory. Back in the early 2000s, the Hayabusa sold for about $10,000 new. Today, first-generation models in good condition can still be found for $7,000 to $9,000, though the truly clean, unmodified examples are now climbing into five-figure territory as collectors hunt them down. And no modern electronics-laden sport bike can replicate the sheer fear and respect the original Hayabusa commanded. You didn't just ride it, you held on and hoped you were ready. The RC51 was about precision. The Hayabusa was about brute speed. But up next comes a machine that mixed comfort and performance in a way riders still dream about today. Number 5, Kawasaki Ninja ZX-10R. When the Kawasaki Ninja ZX-10R first hit the streets in 2004, it was nothing short of a nuclear shockwave in the superbike world. Kawasaki didn't just build a leader bike. They built a street-legal rocket that laughed in the face of anything slower. Packing a 1000cc inline-4 that pushed a screaming 175 horsepower, the ZX-10R wasn't just fast, it was terrifying. Magazines back then called it the most aggressive sport bike ever. And they weren't kidding. The chassis was razor-sharp, the suspension was stiff, and the throttle was a hair trigger that punished hesitation. This wasn't a bike for the faint of heart, and that's exactly why riders loved it. It could hit 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds and a top speed north of 185 miles per hour. New in 2004, it sold for around $11,000. And today, clean examples can still be found between $5,000 and $7,000. an insane bargain for a leader-class missile. Modern sport bikes may brag about electronics, traction control, and rider modes, but the ZX-10R doesn't need a computer to keep you alive. It's a pure rider's machine, a bike that tests your skill, not your software. If you can tame it, the reward is one of the rawest experiences you'll ever feel on two wheels. And speaking of raw, wait until you hear about a Ducati that split the fan base in half but proved itself on the track. Taking charge at number 4, Ducati 999. Say the word Ducati and most people imagine sleek Italian art with curves that make your jaw drop. But in 2003, Ducati did something bold. They released the Ducati 999, a bike that tossed aside tradition and went for sharp edges and radical styling. Some riders hated it, calling it ugly. Others realized it was a masterpiece built for one thing: destroying racetracks. The 999 packed a 1000cc Testastretta L twin, pumping out around 140 horsepower, paired with a chassis so precise that riders said it felt like riding a scalpel. It won not just races but hearts, especially when Troy Bayliss and the Ducati factory team dominated World Superbike on it. Its handling was so good that even with less horsepower than Japanese rivals, it could outrun them on a tight track. Brand new, it cost about $15,000, but today you can snag one for $7,000 to $10,000, depending on condition. And here's the kicker. Collectors are starting to realize the 999's value, so prices are creeping up fast. Modern Ducatis are loaded with electronics, rider assists, and creature comforts. But the 999, it was pure mechanical perfection, a rider's bike through and through. Some called it ugly, some called it brilliant, but everyone had to respect it. And now we're down to the top 3. Which bikes do you think will be here? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more. Number 3, Yamaha R1. When Yamaha unleashed the 4th generation R1, it wasn't just an upgrade, it was a full-blown madness. Gone was the carb-fed simplicity of the 90s, replaced by a 1000cc inline 4 that pumped out an insane 170 horsepower. For the time, that was superbike nuclear power, and Yamaha didn't stop there. They gave it radial brakes, a titanium exhaust system, and a chassis so sharp it cut through corners like a scalpel. This bike was light, coming in at about 450 pounds wet, and it revved to a stratospheric 14,000 RPM. Riders in 2004 were stunned. This thing felt closer to a MotoGP machine than a street bike. The sound, the fury, the way it hit the red line, it was addictive violence wrapped in blue and white bodywork. Back in the day, a brand new R1 cost around $11,000, and today, you can still find clean examples for around $6,000 to $8,000. Think about that. You're buying a piece of racing history for less than the price of a mid-tier scooter. The Yamaha R1 of 2004 to 2006 didn't just compete, it defined the era. And while newer R1s pack electronics, this one was raw, no traction control, no ABS, just rider, machine, and adrenaline. That's why many still swear it destroys modern superbikes in terms of pure riding soul. And if you thought the R1 was wild, wait until we look at Honda's answer, a bike that redefined middleweight supersports in 2003. Number 2, Honda CBR 600RR. When Honda dropped the CBR 600RR in 2003, the world took notice. The bike was compact, with a unit Pro-Link rear suspension, a center-up exhaust, and a chassis that felt more like a scalpel than a street bike. The engine cranked out about 108 horsepower, which might sound tame compared to leader bikes, but in a 600cc screamer revving past 15,000 RPM, it was a full-on adrenaline rush. It weighed just over 400 pounds wet, making it flickable, agile, and perfect for carving up twisty back roads or embarrassing leader bike riders on tight tracks. Reviewers at the time called it the best balanced supersport ever made, and honestly, that crown still holds today. Price back then? Around $9,000 new. Today, you can find solid early models in the $4,000 to $5,000 range, and here's the kicker, they still look modern. That's how far ahead Honda was in design. The CBR 600RR was more than a bike, it was a message. Honda was saying, we can take MotoGP lessons and hand them to you for under 10 grand. And that's why this machine from 2003 remains a benchmark supersport that still destroys many modern middleweights in terms of feel, precision, and confidence. And now for our number one, the legend at the very top, the Suzuki GSX-R1000 K5. The year was 2005 and Suzuki dropped a bombshell on the sport bike world, the GSX-R1000 K5. Even today, this bike is whispered about in hushed tones, the way gearheads talk about Shelby Mustangs or vintage Ferraris. It wasn't just another leader bike, it was the leader bike. The one that left magazines scrambling for superlatives and left riders shaking their heads in disbelief. The heart of the K5 was a liquid-cooled, four-stroke, inline-four that pumped out around 175 horsepower. Back in 2005, a brand new GSX-R 1000 K5 would set you back around $11,000. Today, clean examples can still fetch $7,000 to $10,000 depending on mileage, and enthusiasts snap them up fast. Because everybody knows this is the GSX-R that defined an era. And there you have it, the bikes that defined the early 2000s superbike era. Pure power, raw soul, and machines that still make riders' hearts race today. If you love this ride through motorcycle history, hit that like button, subscribe for more two-wheeled legends, and don't forget to click on the next video because the journey is just getting started.